in my freshman year, I was a DJ. I couldn't bring drums and I couldn't bring a piano to the dorm room. So I brought 2 turntables instead. And that was my first rebranding experiment in life, because I was like a super fat nerd in high school with crazy parents who like worked in my grandpa's drugstore, and like nobody wanted to talk to me. And then like I went to college and I was like, nobody knew the baggage. And I showed up with 2 turntables instead of like kids in 8th grade that saw me jumping in my grandpa's dumpster behind his drugstore.
This is the Impossible Podcast, an exploration of stories that broke convention, set new standards, smashed glass ceilings, and redefined the notion of what's possible.
Welcome to Impossible, a podcast where we give you a seat at the table to uncover and learn from the incredible stories of people who have made the impossible possible.
From professional athletes to world-renowned DJs and musicians, to global pop artists, to movers and shakers in business, we are constantly scouring our networks for the most uplifting, real, and raw stories to share with you. We are so excited that you're here to join us today.
And today we are joined by the very definition of somebody who has made the dream of so many people around the world possible. Not only is he a world-renowned DJ, a celebrity in himself, a massive influencer, really a purveyor of cool. I mean, he's DJ'd for LeBron James, for Michelle Obama. He's done mixtapes with DJ Jazzy Jeff. He had a residency at Hyde. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And most importantly, he's such an amazing person and a fabulous dad. Mick, we're so happy to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So listen, as close as you and I are, I don't know a tremendous amount about your background. And when I was doing some research about you and your story, like, how does a kid from small town Ohio develop this incredible passion in music? And take us back to the early days. How did your childhood define your path?
Wow, it's a great question. I grew up loving music, like most humans and like most kids. Perhaps my, aptitude was a little stronger than most, but I don't think it was out of the ordinary comparatively to, I just know this having a 5-year-old at home now, maybe, I don't know, 6 by the time this airs, we'll say somewhere, a young, amazing human. And I definitely remember my first record of all time when I was a kid. And I was in kindergarten when I got that. And I remember I had a green little record case to carry all my little records in. And I was obviously like 5, but I couldn't really read. So I know the songs I liked, my mom would write an M on it. So I knew what songs I wanted to play. So I guess that was my first experience with DJing, though I didn't know that was DJing at the time. And then I grew up playing drums and playing piano. Really discovered like the early 90s kind of hip hop sound in like middle school, and then obviously like the mid 90s stuff in high school, which is very sample based. And so that taught me to go back and explore music that I didn't know, because I wanted to learn what they were sampling to make the stuff that I like now, well then and still now. And then that basically gave me a pre-internet and pre-Spotify and all that. So like it was a lot harder to go find the obscure things that people sampled in 1992 from some weird pressing of a vinyl in 1976. But I was able to find as much as I could from like secondhand stores or my grandma's record collection. So I started putting together like a musical discography in my head while playing drums and playing piano. And I wasn't really good at either, but I was good enough that I understood music very well. And then I put all of that into like a magic hat and went to college. And my freshman year, I was a DJ. I couldn't bring drums and I couldn't bring a piano to the dorm room. So I brought 2 turntables instead. And that was my first rebranding experiment in life, because I was like a super fat nerd in high school with crazy parents who like worked in my grandpa's drugstore, and like nobody wanted to talk to me. And then like I went to college and I was like, nobody knew the baggage. And I showed up with 2 turntables instead of like kids in 8th grade that saw me jumping in my grandpa's dumpster behind his drugstore because he wanted to like put more trash in. And so his solution wasn't to call like the garbage people twice. It was just like, put like your grandson in the dumpster, jumping on that shit. And so we did that. And so I walked into college with none of that baggage and all like the quote unquote cool things, crates of records, turntables. And I learned that DJing was going to be a hobby that quickly became something to define me. I learned that, you control your story and you control your narrative. And I can't tell you, I didn't realize that part when I was 18, but when I look back on it in life, it informed a lot of shifts that I've made in life. Because I was like, okay, I'm going to reset here. I moved from Ohio to New York in 2008. So that was about 8 years after I graduated college. So I did another reset. And then about 5-6 years ago, I did another reset when my kid was born, where it was kind of like moving more into the business side of life with DJing as a, force multiplier on top of that, versus like me being and then the pandemic was another one, because before it was just like, I'm going to be a DJ that does a bunch of other stuff. And then the pandemic was like, yo, you're not going to be a DJ at all, bro. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm coming out of this pandemic as like Mick 3.0 in a way, which is like, now I really am a guy that does a bunch of stuff, DJing, of course, being one of them, but it's no longer, it's not like 1 and then like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4. We're all on this, everything's on the same. It's more like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. And so that's kind of where I'm at. So how's that for you?
Love it. I have a 2-part question.
Sure.
So one is, I just in doing my research on you and everything I've known about you, and I think I've run into you at Cannes before, maybe even the Grammy.
Probably, yeah.
And so you just have such an amazing reputation. When you think about that transition from DJ into these different business opportunities, especially coming out of the pandemic, how do you prioritize? How do you think about, where am I getting my joy? Where am I getting my revenue? How is it all working together? Like, how do you create your blueprint for Mick 3.0? What does that look like?
Ooh, well, I mean, it's still a work in progress slightly, but A, it's how you want to present it to the world. Secondly, making sure that you have like legitimate authenticity and all of those things, right? Like we all have to fake it till you make it to a certain extent, but at a certain point, if you really want to monetize it and grow in it, you have to show that you have like your little sea legs under you and you can actually do it, right? So, and I have that now in everything I want to do. And what I didn't have really, so like DJing was 80% of my time and 80% of my income, and then that just stopped. So it really gave me the time and the opportunity to say, well, what do I really want my time to look like now? I had no choice but to sit down and figure it out. And there's always like those things, like those biblical things where like God's going to tell you to sit down, and well, somebody, I don't know, I'm sure God didn't want this pandemic, but like maybe he did, but somebody told me to sit down. They told all of us to sit down, and I was like, what can I do? If I don't have this right now. And I tried so long to like hold on to it, from like going to go on live Instagram every night, DJ in my kitchen and make like $30. And I was just like, that got old really quick because that wasn't a great use of my time. And then a couple of things came out of this whole shift. One was that I've learned that I already knew this, but I've doubled down on it. My time with my kid is priceless. And I've always had my kid half the week. Like always, I'm the guy that will take 2 red eyes to get home to my kid if I have to I don't miss my day. And he knows that, but the difference is not showing up. I mean, obviously you show up because you got to work. So that's important. So like, I don't regret any of that. And like I showed up, which is more than 50% of parents anyways, but not having to show up on 2 hours sleep after like working until 11 o'clock on a different coast or a different country, and showing up at 7 o'clock to take him to preschool where he goes and sits for 8 hours. And then you pick him up at 3, and then you have like, 5 hours till dinner. That was definitely great time and quality time, and that was the way that like the world worked. When people like had jobs and school was in session. This pandemic presented an opportunity for me to be rested, still, uber present. School was like, no, we're not doing school. There's no school. There's school like 3 20-minute Zooms for kindergarten. It's like a joke, and so cool. So our time it became like a 24/7, just nonstop, super linear a level of time. And man, if that's not, the biggest blessing, because it's happening also in kindergarten where, when a kid's 1, 2, or 3, you're kind of their babysitter. You just feed them and watch them poop and all that stuff. And at 4, they start to become like little people. And 5, like, I could leave him in another room for an hour. I watch him on a Nest Cam, but like he could be a little individual. I could do my stuff. And we've really become besties versus like the caregiver, obviously always the caregiver, but we're more partners in how we're doing this together within reason. And that's so cool. And there's like an autonomy that can happen now. And I'm so grateful that as he stepped into that version of himself now, that I've had the time and the ability to really go all in with that, with him. And so as I shape what I want my life to look like, as we're back now, getting back, I realized that my time was like much more valuable than perhaps what I previously, priced it as, right? And maybe I don't want to have as much quote unquote DJ success as I did. Maybe I value being home more. It's just maybe he doesn't need the best sweatshirt and the best, organic Whole Foods banana. Maybe we just go to Key Foods and get a banana and you get a sweatshirt from Target. But and I don't have to fly to Portland for 6 hours and fly back. And these are decisions that I previously never thought through that way, because I was so happy and honored that people wanted me to work for them. And now it's given me a perspective on just kind of picking and choosing versus, on my mental health, my emotional health, my physical health, and how I want to show up in every aspect of my life with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about the life of a DJ and they probably have a very glamorous perspective of what that was. But I think the level of dedication and hustle for you, knowing your schedule at times firsthand, it was absolutely unbelievable. Like, we're talking about 5 cities in 6 days, sometimes 4 or 5.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. And
yeah,
I don't want that again. Maybe a little bit, because I'd like to restack my 2020 salary that was cut. But in reason, no, I don't want that again. I just want, if it's not a lot of money, it needs to be an amazing opportunity, and preferably both. And everything else in the middle is going to be a case by case decision, because I have a lot more exciting things I'm doing in this world now, and I could do them right here at my desk. That's great.
Because I think so many people are facing what you're facing right now. Everybody was forced to put things down, and now is kind of questioning what to pick up moving forward. So I guess my question to you is your skill set as a DJ. Really, I describe you as a purveyor of cool, because everything you touch, you just have this sort of magic Mick touch that impacts everything that you work on. And so how are you taking all those amazing skills that you built in your career in music and now applying them to this, what you describe as your third act?
Sure. Well, let's zoom out on that for a second. Okay. If I'm DJing, right? And there's 2 ways you can look at it. One, I managed my whole career from the beginning. So obviously understanding, I have a master's in marketing. I've taken Harvard classes, which, and it's just I understand business probably better than 99% of live musicians. I'm not saying I understand the music business better. That's actually something I actually don't really understand that well, but I understand actual, the legitimate business world more than most, which has been very helpful in my career. And that's been very helpful in generating real relationships outside of the DJ booth. And it's also taught me a lot about branding and marketing, because that's kind of where my DNA is in the first place. Even going back to the story I told you when I was 18, right? When I did that and I didn't even know I did that. And so, that's always been kind of percolating in the back of how my business works anyways. I've always thought about it as, my 9 to 5 is really just running the business of me. The DJing was my widget, but now there's other widgets in the pool. But the other side of that is from more of a, it's a little, bless you. Sorry, my kid just sneezed. It's a little more frou-frou, but DJs are really the ultimate consumer behavioralists, the consumer marketers, because my job is to look at, I'm going to very much simplify this for you, but if there's 100 people on the dance floor, they're all from different countries, cities, races, genders, ages, whatever it is. I have to make you all like one thing. I have to make you all like one thing at the exact same time. And I have to make you like it enough that not only do you like it, but you come out and stand somewhere. And then I need to make you like it enough that you move. And then I need to make you like it enough that you move together and interact with somebody else that you never would have interacted with while I'm doing that. And then, what's up? In 3 minutes, I have to do that again. And then in 3 minutes, I have to do that again. And I have to do that for hours. So you learn a lot about, people. And you learn a lot about how to make people react with other people, and you learn a lot about just consumer behavior, and so that's how and what's crazy is I don't obviously think about that while I'm doing it. I've just done it enough that it's second nature to me, But it's very true, right? And that's just what it is. And so I started thinking well, if I'm good enough at making and by the way, it kind of gets harder the less people it is. If, you know, you mentioned Cannes. If I'm on a beach party in Cannes and there's 1,000 people who have been drinking for 4 days, my job's actually pretty easy. But when I'm doing a private event for like a billionaire whose people are everyone's fancy and everyone's really about like they're you know, they're in their own head, it's a lot harder to make those people all get together because there's not like, you know, what's herd immunity of just to let's get one more of those in this year. It's just, there's just 50 people, right? So, you know, you have to really think about it like this and this and this and this and really pay attention. And it's very, you know, it's alchemy in a lot of ways, right? And so I've taken that thought process and started, you know, I've spoken a lot about it. I've spoken a lot about like creativity and culture and things like that at various institutions and brands. And that area of my life was really just starting to pick up until the pandemic. And, you know, it's fun virtually. I've done a few of those, but it's much more fun in real life. I enjoy being on a stage. I enjoy talking, you know, and ironically, I used to be so nervous to talk on stages before my DJ career really got good. And then I was able to say, hey, like, dude, you stand on stages all the time and play for people. You could easily just stand on a different stage and do this. And then the really funny thing is when I was DJing, I never talked on the mic because even though I could stand in arenas if I had to and make you all happy, I couldn't talk on the mic and be like, put your hands up. Like I would like literally have to like take 3 shots of tequila and take a breath and like turn around and pray and then come back and do it. And then when I took the DJing aspect of it and realized I could do that on stage speaking like as a speaker, then that fed back into my DJ career. And all of a sudden now I'm like, wait, like you can't say 3 words, bro? You can't say 3 words? Like, put 4 words, put your hands up. Like you just said like 22 minutes of a talk. Like you could say 4 words. And so it's just great. So DJing gave me the skill set to do that. And then that gave me the skill set to make me a better DJ. And so it's nice. And there's a real connectivity to all the things I do. And I'm not trying to be a heart surgeon and a fireman. You know, all these things have like connective tissue.
What I love about you, and I'm so inspired, is your appetite and comfort with experimentation. You seem very comfortable practicing and trying different things. And to your point, getting your sea legs, seeing what works and building upon that through small experiments.
I think that comes from DJing too, because like, and you know, one day I'm going to write a book on how like the mind of the DJ enables you to do all these like business things. Like it's been in the back of my mind forever. So maybe this will give me the impetus to do it. So maybe a publisher is like listening. But when you are a DJ, right, it's different than any other recorded music any musical performance. Cause like if you go to like a symphony, right. And I don't know, they play like Mozart Concerto No. 7. I don't even know if that's real, but like, you know, you start playing it and if people don't like it, oh, well, you know, you spent 7 years learning that and they spend $1,000 on those seats. They're going to sit through that shit no matter what it is. That's what's going to happen. Like, that's what it is. But as a DJ, like that's not going to happen. Right. So I have to learn very quickly. Like I got 30 seconds. I give you 30 seconds. If it's not working, right, then I'm switching it up. And if that's not working, I'm going to switch it up. And eventually I get to this point where everything's working because I fine tune. And you might not even know I'm switching it up because I'm watching it. Because there's always going to be some people that like it and some people that don't. But I got to wait until I got to, you know, fine tune it to get to that sweet spot. So yeah, I think that sort of mindset and mind state that I probably had since late high school, early college is, as far as refining on the go, not just refining on the go, but refining quickly on the go, and refining quickly on the go without letting people know I'm refining quickly on the go is the real skill. Because when I look at my career, there wasn't one moment where I just said, nope, like we're going over here. And then, nope, we're going over here. You know, the pandemic kind of did that for everybody. But like, besides that, like, no, it was always just like, I'm going to kind of like gradually get you in here and I'm going to gradually get you in here. And then you wake up one day and you're kind of like doing all these things. And that's honestly, I think a huge benefit of how my brain works from all these years of DJing. It's just programmed into my DNA. Fascinating.
And so many people work so hard to gain those skills, and it's very natural for you through your core, you know, career and as a DJ. So my question for you is, when we look at your childhood and everything you talked about from early childhood into your college years where you're gaining more confidence into, you know, doing private parties for Beyoncé and Jay-Z and LeBron James and Will Smith. Talk to us about the fact that you say you have to know how to control your narrative and control your story. What about that process helped you get from those early days into those type of gigs? Talk to me about that whole notion of controlling your narrative and your story, and what did that feel like when you were invited into those rooms?
Sure. Well, okay. It's kind of what I was saying before. It's all about the perpetual, rebrand of you, right? And again, for me, it's all about subtle course correction, not overnight shifts, And for me, I only made two. I assume maybe this year I'm kind of making another one, but like I've only made two really big shifts in my entire life that altered the trajectory of my career. Three, actually. One was like I went to a college where I knew I could DJ. I went where I knew I could get a college radio show. Like that was like, I was smart. I could have went to other colleges, but like I wanted to do both. And so I felt like I can get a radio show where I went to college. And that was basically college radio was very important. In 1996, there wasn't internet and blogs and Spotify. So we were the playlist. We were, the blogs. We were all of those things. And so that was important to me because it gave me the genesis. But the two main ones I did, I guess that would have to count as the main one, right? Was move to New York from Ohio in 2008. Like I had the best DJ career ever in Ohio. I probably still, hands down, if you put my Ohio career against anything that's happened since, have that. But there was a finite point. Like there was nothing else I could have done. It wasn't going to become financially lucrative. It was a great life, but there just wasn't enough stuff going on. There's more going on now, so I'm very happy for everybody that came after me. But in 2008, there just wasn't. Social didn't exist yet. LeBron was about to leave. How many times can you DJ at the Rock Hall? Though I think I'll be doing something at the inductions this year, so that'd be awesome to go home. But it was just there was a ceiling, and it was coming on quick. And if I wanted to make this hobby, and I just finished grad school, and I was just like, I got one chance. Like I had enough relationships to get myself to New York, and so I took myself out of the Midwestern hobby DJ guy. And I said, I'm going to go all the way in, move to New York. I didn't have a job. I could have got one, but I probably would have made more money in Cleveland getting whatever marketing job I would have got. I didn't have much. I had like some savings. I had like a 3 or 4 month window, and it worked. Really blessed. I worked really hard and really smart, but like there's a lot of luck and there's a lot of faith that goes into that stuff too. And so that was the first thing I did in that regard, where it was like a big shift. And then the second thing I did was about 2015-ish, maybe a little earlier, but my kid was born in 2015. So I remember being around there. I rebranded my DJ name. My DJ name was DJ. I used to use the word DJ. I did. DJ MICK Boogie, which was like a great name in 1996. It was not a great name in 2015. And it might have been if I stayed in the musical lane I was in, playing like 90s hip hop the whole time, and nothing really changed. But I started to be recognized more from my brain as well as my hands. And so I was on stages, not like speaking, but I was on a lot of panels and things of that nature. And, it just looked really stupid. Like it would be like all these like C-suite dudes and then me, and they would use my DJ name, and people would start to like smirk, and I started to feel really embarrassed because I felt like mentally I could hold my own with these people, maybe not knowledge wise in their industries, but like I could definitely hold my own, and I definitely had more interesting stories to tell than most of the people I was on panels with. But my name, I felt like I was cannibalizing my career with that. And I knew as I wanted to move into other things, I needed to flip that. So I just started using Mick, one word, all caps, trying to kind of treat it almost like a brand or like a company. And that really opened up significant doors for me in that regard, because I was able to cherry pick and choose like the best of my whole 15-year Mick Boogie era, and then bring in the best of all the mental things I was working on at that point, and kind of it didn't create a new brand, but it was like a complete refresh. And it was fantastic. And it wasn't like starting fresh at all. It was like getting traded to like a new team or something like that. And that's kind of how I looked at going. Cleveland and New York was like my first trade. And then going from that to that was my second trade. And I'm the same player, but I just have a new environment, if you will. And that, and then while that was going on, I made a conscious effort to but start searching after more DJ clients that would put me in the realm of what else I want to do. So of course I still did the entertainment stuff and sneaker stuff and all of that stuff. But I was like, but I'm kind of like that nerd tech dude guy. So like I started going like, how can I DJ for all the venture firms? How can I DJ for Cannes Lions, for all the ad agencies? How can I do all these things? And so I started going after those. And then that led to like me discovering a love for like angel investing and advising, which is a lot of stuff I'm doing right now. And that's quickly becoming a main thing as well. If not soon, I mean, it's absolutely going to be like, and so it's just, but it all happened from these decisions.
You're such an interesting person to listen to, because you get such an insight into what your process is around, deciding what you do next, and sort of your driving forces behind that. So my question for you, Mick, is in business or as a DJ, like, how do you know when you have a hit?
I mean, you never really know, right? But you have an indication, and so like obviously with like music, it's pretty easy. Like I could tell within 30 seconds if a song's going to really work, whether it's going to work for a mass audience in general, or whether it's going to work as a global like phenomenon. And of course, you're never really 100% right, but I'll take like a 90% on that most of the time. And I felt kind of the same way, for example, with like angel investing. Like I've yet to have anybody go out of business or anybody completely fail, a couple exits, nothing game changing, but like I'm also not a professional in that regard in any way, shape or form either. And so I've learned the same way I would evaluate a rapper in 2007, which is like, are you going to work hard? Do I get a good vibe from you? Do I trust who you are? I'm talking about a rapper. Like if I was going to work with him and make like a mixtape, not like a rapper that I don't know, but like a lot of people be like, we want to work together. Can we work on a project? Can you help me with my career? Can you give me some advice? Blah, 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 whatnot. Some I did, some I didn't, but I learned a lot about like people skills, drive, marketability, whatever. And so that's kind of like my same thought process with this. Like, do I like the founders? Would we have a drink if you weren't doing this? Will you listen to my advice? Will I listen to your advice? Can we learn from each other? Because I can't write you real money. Like I could write you a check, but it's not going to be a check. It's not going to be a check you can't get anywhere else, right? Like I'm not writing you like VC level checks, angel checks, right? There's not. Anybody on this call could write it. We could all do that. So like, what makes mine better than yours? Not yours per se, Megan, because you're awesome and you are too, but like somebody else. Like and so for me, it was just like what is my X factor going to be? It's going to be like, well, my relationships and my creativity and my connectivity and all of that, and it's proven very valuable.
So what has been your biggest setback, or one of your biggest setbacks, and how did you persevere and view that maybe failure or setback as a lesson or a redirection, course correction into a better path?
I mean, it's been a lot. Like a setback and like something that's like
personal, professional. We all have. I think in a social first world, everyone's careers or lives look so perfect and linear. Right. But we know that's not true. We all have challenges or setbacks in business or personally, that I think it's important to maybe share those things with our viewers who are having tough experiences and who are looking for a new path forward. We all go through these challenges.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's been a few, I would say like, I was really driven on being a really amazing provider for my kid, but now, like I alluded to earlier, but I think I also was sabotaging my mental and physical and emotional health. That was a huge thing for me. I don't know if that's like a failure per se, because I'm still here and everything turned out okay. But like if I could go back and do it again, I would have probably pumped the brakes slightly in hopes the car stays alive a little bit longer. And, thankfully the pandemic gave me that opportunity to do that. But, I do think that I was overworking myself, and a lot of it was out of necessity. And, that's a story that's not really publicly shareable, but, I'm not going to do that anymore. Right. And so it's about like, I need to be here for the long game. My kid's 5, 6 years old. I need to be around when he's 50, right? So that means I got to be around when he's like 90 something. When I'm 90 something. And so not sleeping, traveling crazy, overworking myself without, putting in the safeguards I need for my personal sanity that's how that second half of my life is going to go. Beyond that, I would say, I thought I really had a good grasp of what my career was pre-pandemic. And when I had this little break, I was able to actually see, some of the things you thought really were working weren't working. I mean, they weren't not working, but maybe they weren't working to the level that I thought they were, because things were just consistent and things were just like going all the time. And I was wrong. Like, they were going, but if you got to do it 10 times to move the needle, why can't you figure out a way to do it twice to move that needle the same distance? And I never would have taken the time to figure that out, because I was so happy to be doing stuff, right? I'm so happy that people cared enough to want me. And, I don't know, that goes back to like some deep psychological shit as a kid, because I remember my dad took away a stuffed animal in kindergarten, and that like haunted me for like 40 years. But like, so maybe it's a matter of like, to this day, I never take my kid's stuffed animals away. He has like 30 of them on his bed. I throw them at him. But it's just like, I wonder, like, maybe I never said no to anything because I always felt like it was going to be taken away. And when it gets taken away globally, you're like, oh, okay, I'm still here. I'm still alive. Quite fine. Actually better. And so that to me made me realize, I think I was a little bit wrong about where I was focusing my energy and my just my aptitude. And it was great. The first 6 months of this, I was just like, holy shit, what the am I going to do? And then this last part of it, it's been like, oh, I know my purpose now. I know my place. I know exactly how, I don't know exactly how my second half's going to go, but pretty good inclination of it. And I'm really excited about it.
That's just so fabulous and refreshing to hear. And it's such a lovely silver lining on a time where I feel like so many people have been impacted in all sorts of crazy ways, but it seems like there's a lot of blessings that have come out of COVID that are like life-changing, really tangible.
Yeah. I have like the greatest fiance in the world. She's incredible. She's just the best. I've learned so much from her. She runs, her name is Carolyn. She runs a baby food company called Tiny Organics, which is super awesome. A great DTC brand. They're crushing it. And like, I've taught her so much about creativity in my world, and she's taught me so much about just economics and operations and all this stuff those are all the classes I skipped in college because they were early, because I was DJing late, but I showed up for the marketing ones. And so we started an advisory company called the Xavier Co., which is actually my son's middle name, but even though she's not like his mom, but like, it's a great name that I've always loved. That's why he has that middle name, because I'm a big comic book fan, and as you can see, there's comic books behind me. And Professor X, who was the leader of the X-Men, his job was just to take like all those random things, the mutants, and put them in a school and make them better and unify them and make everybody better when they came out than they came in. And that's kind of goes back to that mindset of the DJing thing I was talking about too, right? Like if I give you 30 songs and tell you to play them at a party, like they'll all still work if I tell you the songs. But if I play those same 30 songs, it's just going to sound significantly better because it's going through this like weird filter in my head. And so that's kind of the thesis too with the advisory stuff that we're doing with companies, because it's just like, I like that idea of assembling all these different unrelated things and putting it through my brain, through her brain. And they all hopefully come out better on the other side from the little tiny, influence that we have with them. And so there's like a double meaning for that. I think it's awesome to like have something named after your kid, but I think it's also really cool to like, channel that sort of mindset and mythology behind it. And it's going really, really well. And I'm super excited about it.
Amazing. Well, my last question for you, and then I'll kick it to Megan, is we talked about your natural ability to experiment with confidence. And also, I've heard you quite frequently talk about creativity and tapping into your creativity and with your spouse and how important that is. What is the environment, whether it's a business environment, your DJ environment, home environment, what is the creative environment that really gives you that creative high and energy when you feel you're at your best? Where are you? Cool. What are you doing? What does that look like?
That's a great question. Well, thankfully, her and I align on that in many ways. So it's very easy for us to work together in the same way. Like for me, like I usually have music playing. I usually have music that reminds me more of like, it's more like 70s soul or 90s hip hop or something that puts me in a really like calm kind of like, thoughtful, innocent kind of place to really think, which is cool. But for me, I'm sitting with you in a dark room right now. I'm a big natural light person. I absolutely need natural light to thrive. I can't work in a dark room. I can't work in closed off space. I need open space. I mean, it sounds very fancy. Like I could obviously do anything anywhere. So could you, we all could, right? So like this is, but if you're asking for like ideal conditions, right?
Yeah.
Like, because as a parent, like you throw all that ideal out the way. Like, you know, if your kid needs to eat, your kid needs to eat. You gotta.
But environment matters. When we're at our best. There's a environment that really just triggers you in all the right ways.
Yeah. So for me, it's that. It's like all the things I never got to do. It's like go to bed early, wake up early, go for a walk first thing in the morning, usually with her, or if she's not here, my kid. Go for get some really good coffee, splurge on that coffee, get the best you can. You know, like enjoy that extra $1 that you spent. Don't get mad at yourself because of that, right? Because you want to feel good. I want to walk back in my house. It's sunny out. Hopefully I'm feeling good. And then when I sit down in that right mindset, preferably like run, or like we have like a rower in the basement. We got one of those, what's it called? Those hydros. Like we just do that thing, like, and just, you know, really get your brain going. It's so cliche, but everybody says, right? It's just like the atomic habits of this stuff. Like, do those things and then, you know, sit down and kill it. And when I notice when I don't do those things, it's not treacherous, but it's just a different sort of flow. And I try to set myself up in all of those, you know, in all of those ways. And it was harder during the pandemic because homeschooling, like before, like I would take my kid to preschool because preschool was like at 9:00. Like, let's be real, I got there 8:59, but like he got there on time. But then I'd go for like a run and I'm already out the house. Like I had a tangible place I had to be. So like getting the coffee, going for the run, all that stuff was easy. Then I would come home and try to kill my day. It was harder when you don't have, when you don't have somebody like, you know, you're not writing a check to a school that says you got to be there at a certain time. You're hemorrhaging money if you don't show up. Now it's like a Zoom. It doesn't matter. It was harder for the first half of that to really create my ideal. And then now I've settled, and I think anybody could tell you that. I'm sure, absolutely sure you could relate to that. But then you figure it out, and so for me, that's just what it is. So it's just like you know what it comes down to? It just comes down to peace. Like I just need to be in the environment that creates peace. So like I know what type of chair I want to sit on. I know what I want the room to look like. I know what I want the vibe to look like. You know, when I stay at hotels because they look like how I want it to look because it makes me work better. My office looks like this is a disaster, but like I usually work upstairs. It's beautiful and it enables me. Like I just know I know what inputs I need to get the best output. And so that's kind of what I do.
I actually know that about you from observing you, because I can see when you're super comfortable and you're feeling your best. And then when you go through difficult times, you and I've talked about it. I know when something has sort of shifted you off balance, and I can relate to you on that. I think a lot of creative people, they intake a lot, and you're super sensitive to the area around you. So it's great that you've got awesome consciousness around that, and you've built a life that you feel.
I tell you what, when I met my fiance, like I was just like, I gave her the furniture test really quick. I was like, you know, which chair would you want to work in? And which coffee shop would you want to go to? And she passed all the tests. And I was like, okay, we could do this. It was like, you know, if we were like, yeah, we can't be, you know, I'm just kind of kidding because it's not like that level of like, you know, craziness, but it is true. It is nice to be compatible in the things that inspire us, because we'd be fine if it wasn't, but it's much more fun. It's much more fun to be inspired by the same things, because there's like, you know, again, I think I said it before, it becomes like the force multiplier thing in a lot of ways, where it's just like, I really wanted to go into this phase of my life in a partnership that was 1 + 1 is 3. And I talked to somebody who was like, no, that 1 + 1 should be 10. And I was just like, no, sorry, let me rephrase that. I wanted the whole 1 + 1 is 3 thing, right? Which is what everyone says. And he was like, no, man, 2 1s making 11. And I was like, oh, that's good. And I was like, I like that. I'm stealing that. So I went home and I told her, like, yeah, no. Remember all that 3 I sold you on? That. Like 11. And she's like, okay, all right. She's like, well, you better start working harder if we need 11. You know, but it was that's kind of like our modus operandi for life.
Absolutely beautiful. So we have a 2-part close. We always end on the same question, but I have one question before we close with you.
Sure.
You know, listen, I think there's a lot of people who are probably entering into their creation of their 2.0 or their 3.0. I love how you articulated it that way. Not everybody in a time that's been super easy for them. Some who are feeling inspired, and there's many people who I think have taken up creative ambitions during COVID and might see it as a side hustle, or, you know, maybe they weren't the coolest kids when they were younger. Maybe there's somebody in high school right now who's listening who just wants to reinvent themselves after this. What advice do you give people who are establishing their 2.0 or their 3.0?
That's a great question. I would say two things. One, I've did this, but I'm going to start changing how I speak on it, because I've thought about it so much over this pandemic. But, you know, they always say, follow your passion, and, you know, everything else will happen. And that's true. It is true to an extent. And I've spoken on that extensively, and I believe that because I did follow my passion. But one of my favorite speakers, writers, authors, everything, Scott Galloway, just such a legendary dude. And, you know, I'm kind of like this, he's about 12 years older than me. I've never met him, but like, he's like another, like, just like bald, you know, fair skinned individual who just is a snarky, sarcastic and really smart. And I'm not as smart as him, and I might not be as snarky as him, but I'm working on it. And he's just awesome. I'm just like, he's a very big inspiration to me. And I was reading his book, The Algebra of Happiness, which was a fantastic book, by the way. You know, put that little link in the show notes. But maybe he'll reach out and be like, I want to be your friend. But you know, he said something really amazing. He was just like, you know, all these people who tell you to follow your passion, these are the guys that are just like, they're just basically lying to you. They're like, they made their money off of like petroleum or like lawnmowers, but they're going to speak at like the Yale graduation telling you to do that. But like, those guys weren't waking up in the morning trying to sell lawnmower blades and making $1 billion because they sold it to like, what's a lawnmower company like John Deere. Like, nobody wakes up trying to do that. So it's easy to say that after the fact, right? And so it made me, he was like, find something you're really good at and do that a lot. And that's how you win. And so my thought process is kind of like a combination of both, right? Because this is when I thought about my life. You're right. DJing was my passion and is my passion, and led to all these other things. And I followed it and it worked. But I neglected until I really thought about it over this break. And, you know, his stuff really inspired me to think about it differently. Was, yeah, I actually really am good at it. And like, I didn't know I was good. I was lucky that my passion and what my what's the word? Just like my potential aligned. Because if I, you know, I also really love basketball. Like, I love basketball. I suck. You know, I would have loved to, like, if I followed my passion for basketball, it wouldn't have happened, right? And so, like, I was lucky that when I did follow my passion, which, again, I'll go to my grave saying that's a huge part of it, but also the thing I happen to be really good at aligned with my passion. And so those are the two things that I would give advice to, whether you're starting off on your 1.0 or your 2.0 or your 3.0, like, find those. And those can shift. Mine have shifted, but like, they're going to evolve, but like, they can evolve together, and maybe they evolve separately and something else flies in and flies out. It doesn't really matter. And honestly, like, if you have to lean in necessity to you know, what you're really good at versus what you're really passionate about, that's really not a bad thing. You know, that still puts you in the top 5% of the world if you get to do that, right? Most people who work actually aren't good. Like, the people that work at Rite Aid, they're working there because they got to feed their family. No one wakes up. You're not particularly great at working at Rite Aid. You're doing it because you have to work, and you're grateful to have a job, right? But the people who actually get to work at what they're great at, you're probably in the top 5%. And then the people who get to work at what you're great at and what you love as well, then you're absolutely in the 1%, if not higher than that. And so that's my advice, especially if you're young and you have the time to really figure it out. You do it. That's why you get to audit classes. That's why you get to change your major. That's why you get to do all those things, so you can figure that out. And so that's where I'm at with it.
Beautiful advice. And we end every episode with the same question. It's a bit of a doozy, but what is possible?
I mean, I'm going to say I don't really like impossible burgers, but I like beyond burgers. So like, I'm going to say beyond is possible, because impossible is impossible, because I've been trying to be vegan a lot this year and I'm starving. And when we get off the phone, before I do this other call, I'm about to like seamless myself a Beyond Burger with avocados and pickles. So nobody's going to give you this answer besides me. So yeah, what's possible is what's not impossible. And I'm going to go buy some Beyond stock too. There we go.
I love it. You heard it here first. Beyond is impossible. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Figure out your 2.0 and your 3.0 and merge what you're good at and what you're passionate about. And that will be your secret sauce on your impossible burger. So Mick, thank you so much. We love you.
I love
You're
it. That's
so
awesome.
generous with your time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I really
Thank you, Mick. It was amazing having you on.
Well, my pleasure. I can't wait to hear this and share this and meet you guys in real life soon.
You got it, friend.
All right. Have a good one.
Cool.